The tree of life has three main branches, and one of them spent decades hiding in plain sight. Unearthed in the early 1900s, it wasn't until DNA sequencing became possible that we realized they weren't what they appeared to be. And still today, we're discovering new things about these enigmatic organisms, including that maybe they're a bit closer to us in the tree of life than we originally thought. In the 1970s, researcher Carl Woese discovered a completely unknown branch of the tree of life amongst organisms that had already been studied in the lab. Despite being cultivated for decades, because they superficially resembled bacteria, no one realized that they were actually something completely different. Take a look at some examples. To scientists of the time, and actually still today, these organisms are indistinguishable from bacteria, at least in appearance. That's why their names end in bacterium. But make no mistake, not a single one of these organisms is a bacterium. All of this changed with the advent of DNA sequencing, which Woese used to examine how closely organisms are related to each other on the level of their DNA. Because what Woese realized was that there are some genes that every organism has. And yeah, that means that there are genes that we have that bacteria also have. And what he did was to sequence those genes from organisms across the tree of life and then compare them. By lining the sequences up against each other, he could develop a similarity matrix representing how closely the sequences from each organism matched the sequences from all the others. And what we would expect in such a matrix is that two organisms that are more closely related to one another should have a higher similarity score and cluster. This is the actual matrix from Woese's paper. And while it might not look like much, this is a discovery that fundamentally changed biology. Because what Carl Woese noticed is that there are microbes that were actually more similar to eukaryotes than they were to bacteria. This was just the start of understanding all of the ways that these organisms are unique. This is the beginning of the three-domain tree of life, with bacteria, eukaryotes, and Archaea. Of course, Archaea are different in so many more ways than just their DNA. And over the years, we've come to understand how truly unique these organisms really are. Alongside their superficial resemblance to bacteria, Archaea also don't have a nucleus, or any organelles for that matter. Their metabolisms are also generally more similar to bacterial ones than to eukaryotic ones, although they have some unique things going on as well, which we'll discuss in a moment. Their genomes are arranged like bacterial genomes, and structurally they resemble them as well. But the machinery that Archaea use to copy their DNA, to transcribe their DNA into RNA, and then to translate that RNA into proteins is all much more similar to eukaryotic versions of those machineries than to bacterial. On top of this, Archaea are also unique in the composition of their membranes, using different chemical bonds in the construction of their membrane lipids. They also link pieces of the lipids together in different locations and use a completely different chemical structure for part of the lipid. So, while they look a lot like bacteria, at the molecular level, they're actually more similar to eukaryotes. And in many ways, they're unique. And that extends beyond just how they build their cells. Initially, almost all of the Archaea that we knew of were what we would consider extremophiles. These are organisms that live in conditions that most life would find lethal. Many of the early Archaea were isolated from boiling hot springs, deep sea hydrothermal vents, acidic lakes, and salt-saturated environments. I've had the fortune to work on several of these organisms over the last 10 years of my career. These bottles contain Archaea growing in almost pure sulfuric acid. These ones grow at 95 degrees. And these ones are growing at a salt concentration 10 times that of seawater. Because Archaea are so adept are growing under such extreme conditions, they've been used as models of how life might survive on other planets. For example, some archaea have been shown to be capable of surviving conditions consistent with those on Mars. And they've taught us a lot about what life's limits truly are. They're not just extremophiles though. Alongside these are the methanogens. As the name suggests, these are organisms that produce methane. They are methane generators. And every single one that we've ever discovered is an archaeon. For a long time, the general view was that this is all archaea were: extremophiles and methanogens. But we now know that there's much more to this domain than meets the eye. As the years have gone by, new techniques for investigating microbes in natural environments have been developed, and efforts to bring more archaea into culture have also seen success. The results of these has revealed that archaea are everywhere. They're in the oceans, the soils, in the food that we eat, and in our bodies. But archaea are so much more than just where they're found. Archaea are key players in global nutrient cycles. They're responsible for all primary production of methane on the planet. They're involved in sulfur and nitrogen metabolism, and several lineages have even been shown to be capable of degrading hydrocarbons like those found in crude oil. There are also countless examples of how studying archaea has led to hugely influential technologies. The polymerase chain reaction, a method used to detect specific DNA sequences in a sample that's used in labs across the globe, for example in detecting COVID-19 during the pandemic, is estimated to be worth more than $10 billion US, and the key enzyme that makes it possible came from an archaeon. CRISPR-Cas, which I've discussed in a previous video, was first discovered in archaea, and the various gene editing technologies that have been developed from it are estimated to be worth around $4.5 to $5 billion US. Anytime a company needs an enzyme to perform a function under extreme conditions, there's a good chance that the enzyme that they need comes from an archaeon. One thing that archaea aren't, however, is pathogenic. Unlike both of the other two domains, in all of the years of modern medicine identifying the causative agents of diseases, we've never found a single archaeon that causes disease. The reasons for this are unknown. There are several competing hypotheses, but no one really knows for sure why archaea don't cause disease. It's possible that some of them do, and we simply haven't identified them yet. But it's equally possible that the entire domain is just somehow fundamentally incapable of being pathogenic for some reason. But the years of studies have also revealed that archaea are actually closer to home than we originally thought. With the gradual realization that archaea were really ubiquitous, their relevance was rising. And then in 2015, a new group was discovered that have permanently shone a spotlight on the archaeal domain. In samples taken from hydrothermal vents off the coast of Iceland, several genomes belonging to a new group of archaea called the Asgard archaea were found. The thing about the Asgards that makes them special is that when they were discovered, it fundamentally altered the topology of the tree of life. When Carl Woese first discovered the archaea, he proposed a tree with 3 domains. This tree. The discovery of the Asgards and their addition to the datasets, however, changed it and revealed that there weren't 3 domains, there were 2. And the eukaryotes were actually archaea all along. Many of the systems that exist in our cells originated in archaea, and understanding how they work in modern archaea could help us understand how they evolved to perform the functions that they perform in our cells today. I'll be covering the Asgards in detail in a future video, but it's impossible to talk about archaea in general and not at least mention them. The archaea are an incredibly fascinating group of organisms. It's why I've spent 10 years of my life researching them. They possess the ability to not just exist, but to thrive in conditions unthinkable for us. They alone, of the 3 domains, don't cause any known diseases. And on top of all of this, the story of Archaea is fundamentally our story. Because 2.5 billion years ago, the cell that stood at the beginning of the process that would eventually result in humans was an Archaean. If you enjoyed this video, then hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, then subscribe and hit the notification bell as well. And I'll see you next time. In the meantime, maybe practice a bigger version of your signature dish because the family reunion just got a whole lot bigger.